I reckon I've got complaining down to a bit of a fine art. Now that's because I've practiced it a fair bit. I really work at it, unfortunately, to my shame. I complain about so much, but when I read the prophet Jeremiah, I actually think if anybody's got something that they're allowed to complain about, it should be this guy. He actually had things that I would consider worthy of complaining about. Complaining. Even people like Jeremiah complained. They told God that they were unhappy with how they were being treated. They let God know just how disappointed they felt because of the way they were being treated. Even with so many blessings, we still find something to complain about. The prophet Jeremiah had been ministering the word of the Lord in a way that was declaring things that were about to happen for reasons that he had given, and that is that the people had walked away from God. The people had forsaken the fountain of living water. These people had rejected God, and yet all that Jeremiah said would happen hadn't happened yet. And that's the point. Righteous are you, O Lord, when I complain to you, yet I would plead my case before you. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why do all who are treacherous thrive? And the next few verses, it's kind of the same vein. Hey God, this is not fair. I'm serving you here. I'm giving you my very best. I'm giving you my all. I'm paying my tithe. Surely God would come through and back you up and kind of make it obvious that those that you were prophesying against were not in favour. Yet the prophet has a complaint. It seems that the very people that he's talking about, the wicked, those that were not doing God's will, were the ones that were prospering and succeeding. Here. How should you respond when people complain to you? If instead of becoming defensive and dismissing them and telling them they don't know what they're talking about, perhaps we need to go, thank you. I know you're sharing that with me because you care. I know you're sharing that with me for my benefit. I'm going to treat what you're sharing as a gift I would have otherwise had to pay a lot of money to learn. He comes to this part of the book in Jeremiah chapter 12 and he complains. This is the prophet's complaint. The prophet Jeremiah asks the people, how can you expect to run with horses when you can't walk with the footmen? It's an interesting follow-up to his complaint to God. Here he is complaining to God that it just seems like the wicked prosper, that those who are doing evil are the ones who are apparently being blessed. And as we move on, we see that God is calling Jeremiah to realise that if you think you've got problems now, if you think that you've got something to stop and complain about, Jeremiah, you don't get it. At the moment, we're just walking. At the moment, the troubles that Israel, Judah in particular, are about to experience have not even yet begun. If you can't walk with the footmen, how can you run with horses? And sometimes we are given over to a lifestyle of complaining. We make it just a part of our conversational habit to complain. And we sometimes need to put our complaints through what we might call a theological filter. In other words, sometimes we need to bring our complaints to God and leave them with Him and see how He responds. Jeremiah's complaint. After Jeremiah has complained about how unfair it is and how unfair it is that he's not prospering, and yet the wicked people that he's virtually speaking against seem to be prospering, God then challenges Jeremiah to put his condition in perspective. The troubles that he was complaining about God was saying, Jeremiah, this is like walking with the footmen. At the moment, we're just walking. In a moment, I'm going to call you to run with horses. And if you're losing puff in walking with the footmen, how are you going to run with the horsemen? There's a good lesson there for how we treat our problems. It's not the end of the world. Jeremiah's finished complaining. God encourages him to continue in his prophetic ministry. And the challenge that Jeremiah gives is not just for the people of Israel, it's really something that God's saying to him as well. It's not just the people who are walking away from God that experience times of misery and sadness and difficulty. Even when you're doing the will of God, you can experience those moments where it seems dark and you despair. And it appears that the prophet Jeremiah was subject to those kinds of emotions. Story is never how our story ends. He knows that what we're going through right now is not where he's going to leave us. You may be going through a tough time now. You may be in a season where you are complaining about how you're being treated, perhaps by God, perhaps by others, about life in general.
See, often we complain about stuff that we're going through now when in fact what God is putting us through, God is putting us through. And God is putting us through in order to toughen us up for what's coming up.